So this is basically what I've been just talking about then. If you go into a country and the trademark is already owned by someone else, then and you can't use it. So you might have it registered in Australia, but say the US, if there's another owner there that has the same brand, in the same industry, it might not be for the same product, but the same industry, then you've got a problem. So you don't want to get into litigation in the US if that's where you're going into. So you want to make sure it's clear. So before you go into that country, you need to check that you're not going to be treading on anybody else's toes, because then you can be involved in a dispute. That can be really dangerous too if you are going into somewhere like China. And Leon, we were talking about the China market. You really have to be careful there, getting a good strategy in place for the applications, getting good advice on the ground from Chinese lawyers about what's the best way to get it done, both in Mandarin and English. So it's really important to get the right advice and have the right strategy in place. Just going into China, for instance, blind is suicide basically, because it's pretty dangerous there with people taking brands of unknowing, innocent Westerners.
I keep getting, I think they're phishing emails though, I don't think they're legitimate, from China, like my husband said, does manufacturing and importing and exporting, about saying that they've got a client who wants to register the same name in China, trademark it, and therefore you need to pay us money. I'm sure it's
a lot of those are scams, yes. And I suppose it comes down to, do you have plans to go there? If you don't have plans to go to China, does it matter? If you have plans to go to China, then you might want to look at it. But then there's also the same sort of scam for domain names. And there's a scam for applications, people from organisations from Europe sending trademark application owners letters to say you need to pay.
I get these all the time.
Yes.
Apply for one Australian trademark and you'll get a bill from somewhere in Poland at
That's
$5,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's quite a lot of money. And the trouble is that if you have filed your own application, you're not going to know whether this is something that I should do. So I've had people come to me and say, well, I've paid it. What do I do now? How do I get my money back? Good luck with that. It's just not going to happen. So I think if you look at it from Europe, but I think where the problem is, if you have an application actually via the Madrid Protocol, and so getting a letter from someone in Europe might not be so strange. If they're demanding money, you think, oh, well, that's probably something to do with the Madrid Protocol. So Madrid Protocol is a process where you can file an application in Australia and then use that Australian application as a base around the world and just designate whichever countries you want. So you've got one application number. It's called an international registration, but basically it's still the same thing, but you can manage it better by having the one place where you apply and pay your registration fees and your renewal fees. But you still designate the country, and each country that you designate will examine it according to their rules and regulations. And that may or may not go smoothly. So that's another process, because I have people come to me and say, I want a global registration. Well, there isn't such a thing as that. It has to go through this process. You designate the specific countries, and of course the fees go up per country, and as well as per class. So it can, it has to be done individually. You can't just get a global one. I don't know whether when any of you have travelled, you've seen a product that might be called one thing in Australia, but it's called something else in another, and that is most likely because the trademark was already taken there, and they had to change it. Which is not good for business, because you've got to then have two lots of branding things. And yes, So it means that you have to be careful, and if you are really wedded to a product in Australia, it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to take that brand into other jurisdictions, and be prepared for that. Not a good position for a small, medium sized business, but that's the reality. So that's why it's important not to just go blindly into a country. Do the research first.